Welcome, councillors, staff and media, and also those who are listening in from home to the COVID-19 Response Committee meeting, 14th of May. And this will probably be our last Zoom meeting at our homes. Next time we meet, we should be in the chamber, back where we should be, but keeping our social distance as we should do under level 2. But some of you may wish to still Zoom in from home, and that's perfectly all right too. That choice will be yours. So welcome to the meeting, and I'll call for apologies, and I do have two. I have Councillor Rawlinson and Councillor Letham, and everyone else is here. Someone like to move? We accept the apologies. Stuart and Carolyn, all in favour, raise your hand. Carried. Thank you. Extraordinary business. Any items of extraordinary business? I know of none. None. Okay. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest there? No. Good. Minutes of the COVID Response Committee meeting of 7th of May. Any corrections on page 3? Page 4. Page 5. We'll take them as read and confirmed. Could I have a mover for that? Carolyn, Lynette, all in favour, raise your hand. Carried. And next item of business, number 5, Ashburton Water Zone Committee Annual Report 2019. And we have Bill Thomas just joined us. Welcome, Bill. We can see you and I can now hear you.
Right. Thanks, Mayor Brown. So, do you want me to start or?
Yeah, yes, please, Bill. Welcome, and yeah, to the last. We'll just mention this is the last of our meetings via Zoom. When we meet you again, we should be in the council chamber, hopefully. So, yeah, let's see how it goes. And if you'd like to, we've taken the report as read, and you might like to highlight a few points, and then we'll go to questions.
Okay, but I've just got the hang of Zoom, and you're going to stop them.
It'll be useful for other meetings, I'm sure.
Okay.
We'll learn from this.
All right. So yeah. So thank you, Mayor Brown, and hello to the councillors and Hamish Rat. So we'll take it as read. The report. There was sort of there's probably 5 main points in it. The main one was the review of the Ashburton water consents on the Hecatory Ashburton River. The Hecatory Hines Management Aquifer Recharge Program was completed. Management strategy for the Hecatory Ashburton River mouth. Community Drinking Water Protection Zone Monitoring Program, which is completed. And immediate steps funding for biodiversity groups. So I suppose as far as the real interest for the Ashburton District Council, I would have thought, is the Ashburton River consent process. There's 72 consents remaining to be dealt with, and they've formed themselves into a working group called the Ashburton Irrigation Association, and ECAN have now, I suppose in their wisdom, have now appointed a farm advisor by the name of Dave Ashby, who's doing the economic analysis for how some of these farmers are going to be affected, because some of them consent so won't be able to get water and some will. So I would have thought that would have been done at the beginning of the project, but obviously not. So that's something that might be interesting. Biodiversity obviously is a big topic, and I've been fortunate enough to be involved in the Biodiversity Advisory Consulting Group that the ADC has, chaired by Councillor Lovett. And I think we're making a bit of progress there, and it'll be good if we can get the organisations working together so we don't double up and use our resources in the correct way. Water quality in Ashburton Lakes is another topic coming up this season. We've got good buy-in from the owners up there, so that's ticking on quite nicely. And then finally, there's a review of the zone committee set up and how they work. And I imagine, Mayor Brown, you might have seen there's a request for input from yourselves and probably other people about zones and how people feel about them, the committees. And just finally, I'd just like to thank Carol McAtamney for taking the minutes and doing a good job and being at the meetings and keeping us on track. So that's a rough surmise of the situation, Mayor.
Thanks, Bill, and also Stuart's on your committee too as a council
Yes, he
rep.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Stuart's with us today as well. And councillors, any questions of Bill on his report? Not seeing any. Yes, we have Councillor Falloon.
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the proposed changes as far as water enhancement and all that sort of stuff, we're likely to see in other legislation which might flow down the pipeline in moving forward. Will the role of this Water Zone Committee change under these legislative changes?
I don't think it'll be legislative changes, but they are doing a review at the moment, Councillor Falloon, and they want a bit of input. Hopefully we'll get some from ADC as you're the 50% owner of the Zone Committee. We're accountable to you guys. So that's what they're looking for, just where it will fit in the future. The whole idea of the Zone Committee was really sort of as a sounding board between the consent holders and the public and the councils, just so we could get things done in workshops rather than having long debates and trying to get buy-in at the beginning rather than at the end. Sort of a smoothing platform, if that explains it.
Thanks, Bill. Angus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Bill, can I thank you and your committee for all the hard work you've done. I know from bitter experience that reviews are difficult to work through, and I wish you all the best for that. There was a sentence in your opening paragraph about, what was it, third paragraph down, where you say in your report, which will enhance habitat and water quality as well as enabling the river mouth to stay open longer. Would it be helpful to the community and the zone committee if the district council closed down their present stop water takes for good and left the water in the river?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and I know that I think your policy is to close the stop water schemes, and I mean that will help. We're just going to make sure that water ends up in the river and not in an irrigator's irrigation scheme, probably. Angus or Councillor Mackay, I think that's the key. But I think the more water we can get back in the river, the better.
Supplementary, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
One of the things in our long-term plan, Bill, is that fish screens on 2 of our major intakes, and they're pretty costly beasts to do, and personally I'm looking at that they shouldn't be erected, that the water should actually stay in the river, and this goes back to my personal policy. It's about 1999, 2000. So I haven't won yet, but I actually think it would be better for the water to stay in the river. But why I'm bringing the subject up now is that we have our long-term plan, and one of the things at the top of our long-term plan is that to have these fish screens on the water takes. That's why I'm asking the question of you, if it would be helpful if the water stayed in the river. I'm actually using those words, in the river.
Well, yes, the bottom line would be yes, it would be helpful. Yeah. It's a big target to get to 6 QMEX, as you know, and so every bit will help to make that happen, yeah.
Good. Councillor Lovett?
Yes, I was just wondering about the High Court's decision with Forest and Bird. Is there any thoughts in trying to repeal that? Because going on in the future, it's really going to hinder this group. There's not going to be free and frank discussion. I just wanted to know your thoughts around there. Can it kind of be attacked again, or is that what it's going to have to be?
Well, Councillor Lovett, I personally was very disappointed with the High Court decision. That it was overturned the previous ruling that already made, but ECAN didn't have an appetite to challenge for it, and so they're working through a different process now. And I think in the end of the day it'll work out all right, but yeah, it wasn't helpful.
Hamish may have some comments on that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My understanding is it didn't actually get all the way to the High Court, and that the Office of the Auditor General that in contemplating the High Court action and the chances of success, pulled out of that process and revoked their discretionary exemption for members of the Zone Committee to talk freely and frankly as if they had no interest. So there isn't, as I understand it, there isn't actually a High Court decision to challenge. It's the Audit Office having pulled out of that process, presumably on the basis they felt there was limited chance of successfully keeping it in place. So any challenge to that decision is actually to the Audit Office, and of course the Zone Committee, supported by this council and potentially ECAN, I just have to check that, did express concern at the Audit Office decision, but to no avail. So there isn't currently really even a process to challenge the perspective. There's certainly not a court decision to actively challenge. That's my understanding of the situation.
Yeah, thanks, Hamish, and very good question, Lynette, and hopefully a good resolution comes out so everyone can participate in the Zone Committee around the table, because there's a lot of knowledge there, and if it can't be shared, then perhaps the wrong decisions get made, or recommendations out of that meeting, out of that committee. It's not a decision making, it's a recommendation meeting. Stuart.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Commenting on the discussion on the fish screens between Angus and Bill, we've got the council Stockwater Strategic Committee, and we're working with irrigation schemes to take over parts, if not all, of our stockwater system, and we're very mindful of the cost of fish screens. And in the long term, if we do have to take water, we hope to piggyback perhaps on the RDR. If they put in a 10 million or whatever fish screen, be much more economical to access water through there than put our own little fish screens on the Ashburton. So I'm sure in the long term, our aim is to stop taking water at all from the Ashburton River or its tributaries.
Yeah, hopefully get a win-win situation there. Councillor Lovett?
Yeah, the question I had was down at the Ashburton River mouth. There's going to be a lot of money spent down there with fencing and planting and screens, and I just wonder whether they've taken the locals' perspective in, because look, we've seen that area down there swamped by water probably 3 times in my lifetime that I've lived here, and it's just, if you're going to spend all this money and it gets washed out, is it going to be value for money? And we know that a lot of locals use that area for motorbikes and things. How are you going to fit all this in? It's just a big question a lot of us have. We just don't want to see our good native area destroyed.
Well, I believe that the ECAN staff did a quite significant survey of the locals and other groups tramping, fishing, motorbikes, jet boats. So they're telling us they did do good research and did do all the due diligence before they made their recommendations on where they're going to fence and everything. So I believe that has been done, Councillor Lowe.
Thanks, but Bill, just got a question on the Ashburton River review, which is ongoing, and you mentioned that some farmers won't be able to get water as it is. So surely there'll be, and if they don't get water, that's detrimental to their businesses. That'll be a huge impact to their business. Do you think there's a good compromise in there somewhere?
Well, I don't know if it's good. There is a compromise because they can join up to one of the schemes if they can't get their own bore water, which of course will come at a higher financial cost than what they already had. But they've been encouraged to get onto it early and try and do some things, but there's no easy answers there. There will be water available, but it will come at a higher cost than what they've previously been paying, and hence I think that's why they've engaged this consultant.
Okay, great. That's good that they're proactive in doing that and working through the problems I've got. So that's good. Any other questions for Bill? Angus? Oh no, sorry, no. It was me. Did something my end, which didn't flag you up at all. Thanks, Bill. If there's no questions, thank you very much, Bill, for giving us your report. And also, if you'd like to pass on thanks to your fellow members of your committee for the commitment they give to sorting these sorts of things out in our district, providing leadership on the water zone. It's good, and you've got a good range of people on that committee, which is excellent as well. So just thank them on our behalf for all the work that they do.
I'll do that, Mayor, and thanks for the opportunity to present to you, Council. And I just need to add at the end that there is some vacancies, and with the virus and the local body elections, that held up that process. But the sooner we get a couple of more people on the committee, the better, just for succession planning, etc. But that's everything else. But thank you.
Yeah, so you'll be advertising that shortly, no doubt.
Hopefully September, I think.
Okay, great.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much, Bill. Well done.
Thank you. Bye.
Item number 6 is the COVID Social Recovery Advisory Group. Hamish.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report responds to the request from Council at the last COVID meeting to consider whether we needed to establish a social recovery advisory group to mirror the economic recovery advisory group that has been set up. The report comes to the view that the social recovery area is a little less clear as to the future of it in relation particularly to civil defence and a central kind of approach. It does have the view, though, that there is benefit in a local group considering the social issues in response to the pandemic and in particular the impact of the lockdown. And it comes to the view that Safe Communities it already exists, has a membership that would very closely mirror the membership of any other group that we could establish, and therefore that Safe Communities should be asked to consider these issues amongst the other issues they consider, and that in the meantime we don't need an additional recovery advisory group. There are a couple of additions to Safe Communities being recommended to ensure an active link with the newcomers network in our district, and therefore we're recommending that the Welcoming Communities Advisor from Council joins the group. We're also recommending that Council Civil Defence Recovery Manager joins the group to make sure that the connection with civil defence remains strong, and indeed if civil defence has an ongoing role for whatever length of time, then we get the benefit of that connection and knowledge and experience. So with those couple of tweaks, we don't think there's a need to establish a new group. And as per the Economic Advisory Group, Mr. Mayor, we do need just to keep an open mind as to what the needs are into the medium and long term. And if we found that this group could work differently or better, or there was a need for some other structure to assist the recovery of our community, then we should have an open mind to that. One of the strengths of Safe Communities, of course, is that our Deputy Mayor is the chair of that group, and so there is already a really strong connection with Council, and any reporting back and feedback from her as to whether this group is indeed the right way to approach social recovery, or how it might be better structured or functioning into the future. We have that really strong connection via her chairing the group. So that you can see the recommendation there. It's to not establish a separate social recovery advisory group.
There we go. I muted myself now. Thanks for providing that report, and it just puts our minds at ease that it's we don't need to set up another group, but if we pass this recommendation, but we are still watching and keeping an eye on it, and there's others there doing it for us, so we have that benefit that will happen. So Liz, you'd like to comment?
Thank you. Yes, I would. So just a couple of things. One is that there's a couple of members missing off that charter purely because they signed it after this charter was produced. So neighbourhood support and rural women are both included in our members, which brings it to 27. And I think there's some other people that probably could come on as well. A comment from our Safe Community Coordinator is that some safe communities, I mean, they're obviously the coordinators are getting together and sort of chatting about, situation going forward. And a lot of councils or safe community coordinators are writing a recovery strategy to sort of define what COVID's going to have an effect. And I wondered if that was something that our council had thought about, and if I think what the coordinators are doing in other parts of the country, and bear in mind a lot of them are part of council staff as well, but they're doing surveys to sort of ascertain what life is going to be like post-COVID. So just that question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it may well be that such a sort of more formal strategy is appropriate. We haven't started with the kind of the strategy. We've started with some, as you know, in the economic recovery area, with some good ideas and got them in place. And now in the social space with this umbrella group to start that process. And from my way of thinking, once the two groups get going, so the Economic Advisory Group met for the first time yesterday, and Safe Communities is now kind of in the picture around the social area, that it'll become clear from the discussions from those groups as to the value of a more formal approach to a strategy. What of course we don't know is the extent of the need in our district. And one of the things we've seen through the civil defence response and lots of updates from the National Emergency Management Agency is there are quite different pressures around the country from the lockdown, and the needs in one area aren't necessarily the needs in another, and we're sort of at the cusp, I guess, of understanding the impact. We're particularly all watching what happens when the wage subsidy finishes. Will that generate a whole lot of need in our community, or will our community be relatively unscathed because of the agricultural base to our economy? We just don't absolutely know yet. So I think a strategy is definitely has the potential to be useful, but we've kind of started by trying to get some early initiatives underway, like the Mid-Canterbury Open for Business, like some employment exchanges between needs and vacancies, and now getting this kind of thinking clear around the social recovery, and then we can turn our mind to what we best need to support our community going forward, including a more formal strategy.
Liz, your supplementary? Very good. John?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I fully support the report that we've got in front of us, but I'd also like to acknowledge that this idea came from Liz. Rather, we were talking about setting up another separate committee, which could have turned into yet another talk fest. What we're doing here is giving it to a committee we've already pragmatic, got their feet on the ground, and are able to help people.
A good common sense decision, John. So any further questions of Hamish? Liz, your hand got up again?
Yeah, I just want to move it if there's no other questions.
Yep. John moved, Liz seconded John. Further debate? Any debate? I'll put the motion. I'm in favour. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Carried. Thank you. Next item of business number 7, LGNZ 3-year business plan 2020. Page 17. Hamish, you could speak to that or add to it? Or?
Very little to add other than what you have in your papers. You can all see the business plan. We know in talking and being in contact with local government New Zealand, it's a very fluid time for them as well as they contemplate the immediate needs for the association around advice and advocacy. Of course, there's been a lot of attention on COVID and the pandemic and the impact of the lockdown, but there's a lot of business as usual going on for local government New Zealand in terms of advocacy, and we only have to think of the work in water and infrastructure and reviews of things like the RMA to know that there is a lot of ongoing work that LGNZ has on its plate. So you can see the business plan there. Our recommendation is that we simply receive it, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Angus. And I know in wider mayoral stuff, there's been some chats around the chair of the committee at the moment, who is David Cull, who was the mayor of Dunedin City, but is no longer. And it's probably a one-off that's happened. Is we've got no elected official who is the chair of this group, and it's being having a look at. There's nothing to say that he's not doing a good job. He is doing a good job, but he's just not elected being there. So, and we were going to have the LGNZ AGM in July, and I think it may be coming back to July again. Now, it was pushed to September, but maybe coming back, so that can be corrected, so we get an elected official who is the chair of that group.
Yeah, that's right, Mr. Mayor. It was a situation that was contemplated, a year ago when Dave advised the membership that he wasn't going to re-stand as the mayor. And my recollection is that at the last year's AGM, it was agreed that he would remain as chair through till the next AGM, even though it was clear he wasn't going to be an elected member post the election. So the situation was contemplated. It was felt that it was appropriate at the time, but I guess now that we're in the reality of it, there's a couple of questions there around whether his links, remain as an elected member. So it'll hopefully be resolved relatively soon.
Yeah, just avoidance of doubt. There's no issue with his leadership. It is fine.
No, that's right.
Yeah, Angus.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just move the recommendation.
Okay.
Receive the report.
Carolyn. And Stuart, you had a question, did you?
I've got a comment. It's a whole, 60 pages. We need to use Carolyn's word, I think. It's a pretty wordy document. Time you plough through the whole thing, my goodness. People nowadays use paragraphs where they could have used a short little phrase to say exactly the same thing. I spent half a night trying to digest it, and it was so wordy. When you finished, you think, now what did all that mean?
I tell you what, you will never get that from me. Short and sweet. I've got to move in a seconder. I'll put the motion. If there's no further discussion, will everyone in favour raise your hand? Carried. Thank you. So that takes us to the end of our business. There's no PE, so I'll declare the meeting closed and thank you for your attendance.